Writing is one of those skills that we know we need to teach our students, but in my teaching experience, one that we sometimes feel like we're boring our students with because they think it's just going to be an extension of grammar or something that is only built on whatever topic's being discussed. We often do them without really thinking about why such and such an activity is being used, what its aims are, and ultimately what its downfalls are that we as teachers need to address. Clearly an image none of us wants to see in our classrooms, but unfortunately this is one that crops up when it comes to writing tasks for a few different reasons. Many writing tasks are simply given to students to do, either from a course book or as an impromptu extension of a speaking, grammar, or reading task. This leaves students' experience, prior knowledge, and interest out of the equation. I'm sure you've seen quite a number of textbooks give an explanation of whatever writing skill is being focused on up front, and then ask students to practice that in the task. A very PPP-style lesson. It doesn't maximize students' involvement in their learning process, and just therefore only the task itself practices the skill once. Much of the themes or topics used in writing tasks are extensions of a theme or topic for the unit which you're studying. The context may not be entirely relevant to your group of students, and therefore students can be left wondering how this writing skill is applicable to their real lives. So let's take a look at an example from a course book that addresses the first problem. This is taken from Just Reading and Writing Pre-Intermediate. Clearly the focus here is on paragraph organization, in this case order of importance. What I like about this is that before students do any sort of writing practice, they're given a warm-up that allows them to personalize the content and prepare it into what they feel is most important to least important regarding good health. This can be used as a speaking activity with partners to get them more involved before the writing begins. Later on, they read the passage with Marco as the writer, who's already ordered these things into a paragraph and asked to compare his choices against theirs in the previous chart. It's a simple design, but what it does is get students involved in the preparation of the writing task, which obviously is to write a paragraph about good health and order the paragraph according to importance. So along these lines, one thing that you can do to get your students involved in the preparation of materials is to use student-generated content. Sometimes you can find tasks in the coursebooks, like the one I've just shown you, that help you do this. But if your coursebook doesn't give students this opportunity, there are other easy and dynamic ways you can minimize the content you need to generate yourself for your lesson and engage the students while doing so. One, for example, is getting students to create an online survey on whatever topic you or they choose. Now doing so on paper can not only be time-consuming, but can also use up a lot of paper for the rewrites, so why not do so online? At SurveyMonkey.com, you can register for free and create a variety of survey styles that can suit the writing subskill you're focusing on. After you choose the design template you want, then you get students to create the survey themselves with your help. You can choose from a variety of question types, like this one. I've chosen multiple choice with only one choosable answer per question. You can see here that there's a wide selection of question types that can suit almost any type of survey you want to make. Then you have the students type in the question text. In this case, I've decided to make a survey about sleep, so I've got on weekdays I get up, and finally on separate lines go the possible answers. After you've gotten all the questions written, you'll end up with a survey like this. I've shown a couple of different question styles here so you can get the feel for what your options are and how students will be able to respond. You can get students to fill out the surveys either by emailing a link to them, inputting emails to have SurveyMonkey send it to them, or post a link to a blog or web page. What you get from the responses is compiled answers in percentages, bar graphs, and replies. That's what the free basic account gets you. If you upgrade and pay, there are a whole bunch more options at your disposal. I don't know about you, but I prefer online things that are free for the classroom. So this is just one example of a fun and engaging way to get your students involved in the preparation of the writing task, depending on what it is. Now another problem I've mentioned with regards to how writing tasks are presented is that often in coursebooks the skill is simply told to the students before the task. As you can see, like I've said, this PPP approach, though clear, doesn't really engage students in their own learning very much, and definitely doesn't maximize the opportunities for personalized exposure to the subskill itself. I mean, here you've got an example of either the coursebook or teacher just stating what logical order is. Then a reading in order of importance, and then the task, which is simply to determine which way it was organized. After that, students are asked to write out a paragraph about getting married. It's very top-down. So instead of simply telling students what the writing skill is directly, try using guided discovery tasks. In this activity from the same book as before, which is also about organizing a paragraph, students are given a sample paragraph first and asked questions that help them discover how the paragraph is organized, and then later told how the paragraphs are organized in order to validate what they've discovered on their own. After that, they do some controlled practice on reorganizing sentences to make that paragraph, and finally, they attempt it on their own. Another example of this type of guided discovery I've taken from Transferable Academic Skills Kit, one of my current favorite titles, which is aimed towards students in the EAP context. Here, students are challenged to reorganize the differences between formal and informal register in writing without being told explicitly what those differences are. They get the two examples, and then a chart to complete, which guides them in noticing the differences between the two and inferring how these features, like contractions, fillers, passive voice, and so on, are characteristics of one or the other register. What these kind of guided discovery tasks do is familiarize students with the concept using critical thinking skills. With this type of introduction, students get more involved in their own learning rather than just being told how to do something. If nothing else, it's an extra activity for students to be exposed to examples of the subskill. Now here's a task for elementary students that on its own is already using the guided discovery technique. Here, they read the paragraph, and then they are guided by questions to determine rules for punctuation and capitals. And finally, they apply the rules they've discovered to the paragraph in exercise 2. All that's fine, but another way we as teachers can avoid simply teaching top-down is by giving students a task to complete first and having them realize that there are gaps in their knowledge that prevent them from doing it. So if we go back to that original activity, let's put the task from exercise 2 first. This uses task-based learning approach. Modifying the order of the tasks in the coursebook can be an easy way to help students realize what they need to know. It can also help teachers as a needs analysis so that time isn't wasted on reteaching something that your students have down pat. So let's take a closer look at the third problematic area for writing tasks not being effective. I'm sure we've all seen this simple literacy level task at one point or other. Pretty simplistic. Necessary, but limited on a personal level. Of course, students realize that they need to know this in order to survive here, so the task-based learning really isn't necessary to get them engaged. Nor is guided discovery, because really, what can you do to direct students beyond these little arrows? So another suggestion I have is to create extension activities that are personalized to the students in your class that either they'll immediately be able to use in their lives, or like this one, something fun, kind of like a project, that results in an interesting and useful tool that they can use. For example, I found this handwriting tool that allows you to create a font usable on your computer directly from your own handwriting. I'd always thought this would be pretty cool, even for making my own handouts look more personalized, or even commenting on student essays in Word. From going to fontcapture.com, you print out this template and give it to your students. On it, they again get to practice their letter formation using the ascender, baseline, and descender lines. It's a bit more adult than the tracing task we had before. And from this page gets scanned and uploaded to the website where it converts it into a font that can be installed in your computer's font folder. After that, they can use it to type with by using the keyboard, which not only reinforces recognizing the letters, but is another survival skill. Incidentally, I've used this font capture to create the font I've been using as the headings on each of my slides, which is my handwriting. Did you notice?